It's interesting, when I was looking for a talk title for the talk today, I didn't really have a title that fell from my mouth, that just seemed apt, totally appropriate. And so the title I gave to this talk is Pa-Ternity. Because it's really about identifying ourselves, and paternity, of course, is identifying the paternal nature of your being. My father's eyes, eyes that find the good in things, eyes that find the source of help, eyes full of compassion, eyes that see the pain. It's interesting. My father's eyes were the thing I most coveted about that man. He had these gorgeous blue eyes. And he had 4 sons, and the first 3 came out with my mother's eyes. All 3 of us have my mother's dark brown eyes. Mine are a little green. Now, when I did a production of Candide, there's a line in it about the blue eyes of Candide, and so I got contact lenses. And I had these blue eyes on top of my brown eyes, and I literally looked like something from The Damned. It was really scary. I'd put them on and be like, But I really loved his eyes, and what's really fascinating to me is that my son, and I really loved your talk, Alex, and I'm still very emotional from it. So good luck to you all. My son has my eyes. I look at my son and I see me. I see me in so many different ways, and payback is a bitch. Because my son is just as hellacious as I am. He is as wacko as I am. He is as talented as I am. He is as crazy as I am. He is as charismatic as I am. He has everything I have. I mean, and more. And I know he's probably watching right now. So, and my daughter has my father's eyes. She has these beautiful blue eyes. Now, she also has her mother's eyes, who has beautiful blue eyes. But it's interesting that they both came out. One of them had the brown eyes, and one of them had the blue eyes. And Nora has the blonde hair, and Will has my color hair, gray. It was funny, because I said that once to him. I said, "You have my color hair." He went, "I don't think so." You have what my color hair used to be. So my dad had 4 boys, and I was the number 2 son. And for a long time, it was just the 2 of us, meaning my older brother and I, for a very long time. And so my father dealt with the fact that he had 2 sons for 8 years. He had 2 sons, my older brother Tommy and me. And my older brother Tommy was the jock, the really, handsome, talented, athletic one. And then there was me. And I was the hyperactive, kind of ADD one that just was bouncing all over the walls, very skinny. No athletic ability whatsoever at that time. Since then, I've become quite good at being an athlete. I really have. You haven't lived till you've seen me play softball. And I did bowl at 214 just recently, and that is athletics. I know many of you say bowling's not sport. It is. My father was a cop. Everyone in my family were cops. My father was a cop, his brothers were cops, my brothers were all cops. Every single one of my brothers were all cops at one point. In fact, my youngest brother is still a cop. And my grandfather was a fire chief. So they were just all these kind of very massively masculine presences in my life, and which is why I'm so masculine. I wanted to see if you all laughed at that. Thank you. Really, thank you. So, when I was born with a hole in my heart. Now, in 1954, when you were born with a hole in your heart, they weren't sure you were going to live. And they pretty much told your parents, "We don't know, this is touch and go with this guy." And so, every other month, I would have to be in the hospital, being plugged up to all these machines just to see how was the hole doing. And I was very weak as a young child. And the men in my family just weren't weak. My father was not weak, my brothers were not weak, my uncles were, it was an anomaly that I came out the way I did. And back then, when you went in for a heart, whatever they're called, what are those things called when they just check your heart? Like EKG. They were these suction cups Anybody ever have one of those with the suction cups? Oh, of course you did, Marilyn. And the suction cups were put all over you, and these gooey suction cups. And when they take them off, it's like big pop, and it's like you had this big welt on your chest. Well, this went on for me in my childhood like every other month. And my father would pick me up in front of our house. He'd come pick me up in the squad car. And just because I liked it, he would always show up with the lights going and the squad car, and he and his partner would run out of the car and grab me and throw me in the back seat. It really was fun. Later in life, I thought to myself, I've already done that. I never have to do that again, which was good. And then he would take me to the hospital, the police hospital, and then they would take care of me. And this went on for a very long time. And one of my favorite stories about my father, and I talk about it in Sissy Boy, my show, is when he really did beg me to try sports. Baseball. A sport that I've never quite understood. But I was put way in the outfield, you know, because in Little League, not a lot of balls get hit out there until you put someone out there who can't catch. Then everyone's a slugger. And I remember that one of the first times I was put out in the outfield, and I was out there daydreaming about some Broadway musical I'd be in someday. And this ball came, and I just was like, oh my God. I knew I had a glove on, but it was kind of elusive why it was in my hand. And the ball just came, and I saw it, and it was like a perfect place for me to catch it. It hit me, I fell down, and that was my entire time with baseball. But when the team that I was on won the Little League championship, my father brought me home a trophy. And he said, here, your team won. And I saw the pride in his eyes, and he was just so excited because he thought he was giving me something special. What he was really giving me was the realization that I had nothing to do with this trophy. But he didn't know that. But that's kind of the way my father and I lived our lives together. Him thinking this and me thinking this. And so we had, you know, less than a thrilling relationship. We didn't have a bad relationship. We just didn't have a great relationship. I wasn't the son that my father had in mind. I didn't think. My son is exactly the son I had in mind. And I know that any son that came along to me would be the son that I had in mind, because they would always show up as who they are, and I would love them. And I know my father felt that way too. Ernest Holmes says, never limit your view of life by any past experience. That also goes with how you see your past experiences. So my relationship with my father, I've always described as a bit strained. Having a gay son, ultimately, having a gay son in a time when no one talked about being gay, and I did nothing but talk about being gay, to everyone who would listen, to all of my father's friends, all of his cop friends, all of his detective friends, anybody who would listen, I was a proud gay man. And my father had to get used to that. When I decided Kevin and I were going to get married 25 years ago, gays weren't getting married 25 years ago. It literally shook, it rocked my entire family. It just rocked it. There were members of my family who were literally in a tirade about it. How dare they do this? It's one thing that they're gay. How dare they decide to flaunt it in our faces? But my father didn't. He bought us a gift. And he was very quiet about it, I have to say. And there's a picture of me in the musical Panama Hattie with Ann Miller. And I play a sailor. And I was home on leave from that show. And thank you. I was home from that show, and I had a picture, and I was showing it to my grandmother, my father's mother, and she was like, where did you get this picture of your father? Because my dad was a sailor. And I looked at it, and then she pulled out a picture of my father as a sailor, and they were almost identical, except for the blue eyes. The funny thing is, I put a picture of me online recently, and everyone basically said to me, oh my God, that looks just like Will. And I think about this. I think about the paternity, the DNA that moves through all of us. You all have fathers. Your father's DNA is in you. You all have mothers. Her DNA is in you. Everything, your entire ancestry, it is in you. But the ancestry of all mankind is also present in all of us. That's really where paternity comes from. And I didn't want to be like my father. I didn't. Because I saw my father as a man who never accomplished what he wanted to accomplish in life. I saw my father as a man who didn't succeed at what he said he wanted to succeed at. And when I was starring in 42nd Street, the show came through Philadelphia. And on opening night, everyone showed up. My father came with a party of like 40 people, all of his friends. And there was his son, starring in the show. Huge picture of me outside of the Forest Theater. Huge picture of me jumping off of a dime. I can't get my legs up at the same time now, but they were both up. And diving off of this dime. And my father had his picture taken in front of it. And so did all of my relatives. And he wrote me a letter at that time. And he basically said to me in the letter, I would have liked to have had your life. Now, that was when I was 30. He died when I was 51, I believe, or 52. Between 30 and 52, so much happened between us. That wasn't good, bad, or indifferent. It just kind of happened. And we just lived our lives, not much together, because I moved out to LA 18 years ago, and so we didn't see each other that much. But when he was dying, I went to see him, and with my children, with my son and my daughter. And it was interesting watching him be so paternal and so kind to my children, and so interested in my children. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, where was this guy when I was growing up? And my answer now is, because what I really want you to look at is, as Ernest Holmes says, you can change anything from the past the minute you change your perspective to it, your relationship to it. And I know the answer, where was he at that time? He was working 3 jobs. He was a cop and a bartender. And he also did taxes. So he did so much just to raise a family that I may not have noticed. Children don't notice those things. I don't think our children do notice where everything comes from that they have. And our children today, my children certainly, have an incredible life. Right now they're in Palm Desert in a gorgeous resort, just swimming the day away. Well, right now you better be there online, but eventually they will be swimming the day away. So when my father was dying, it just happened to be when we were with the children back east. And so we were all there, and we met with him, and we were leaving. And Kevin and the kids got in the car, and I stayed in the room just to say goodbye for myself. Not thinking he was going to die, but thinking he would die in the next year, and I'd go visit him. And I asked him, I said, is there anything you want to say to me? Is there anything you want to say to me now, based on everything? And he had cancer, and it was just destroying his body. His body was barely there. And he looked up and he said to me, nope, I'm good with everything. I wouldn't change a thing about my life. This from the man who wrote me he wished he had my life. And I was confused. I was like, really? And I remember even having this little sly grin on my face. I was like, really? Everything about your life is perfect. You like everything about your life. And he went, from where I'm sitting, everything worked out perfectly. And when I left there that day, I was a little angry. I was surprised, and I was annoyed. I was like, really? Even at the end of his life, he's delusional. I did. This was my thought. I'm being very transparent with you today, as if I'm never transparent with you. And I just said, and I'm telling Kevin what he said, and Kevin didn't say anything. He was very quiet. I just said, wow, that's just so amazing to me. And then the next morning, I was going to Unity to speak. I was giving a talk at Unity of New York, and the title of my talk was, You Can't Stop the Beat. As I was pulling up to the theater to give the talk, my father died. And I was called and told he had passed away, just as I was going in to give a talk called You Can't Stop the Beat, this uplifting talk. And I did it. And my son, when he heard, he put his hand on my shoulder from the back seat of the car and he said, I'm really sorry you lost your dad. And I lost it. It took me a couple years to really think about what my father said to me. And my life was perfect. How many times have you heard me say, my life is unfolding perfectly? My father said to me in that moment, that his life had unfolded perfectly, and at the end of his life, he understood that. And I had a human experience of it. I had a relative world experience of it. How can you say that about all the things in your life that you didn't have? Your bankruptcy. How can you say that about losing your wife at the age of 40? How can you say that about all of this? How can you say that about having a gay son that drove you nuts? How can you say that it was all perfect? Because you actually understand at a point in your life that it was all perfect. In fact, it is all perfect. And so we get the opportunity to reparent, to re-accept everything that's come from the past and say about it, it's all perfect. So my father was actually saying my life is unfolding perfectly. When you say you're being the father of, you say the father of new thought, the father of modern science, the father of whatever, what that means is the founder. So I would like us to think today about this concept of fathering. When Karen was singing My Father's Eyes, Amy Grant was really singing about God. That's what she meant. I would like to end my life, when my life was over, I would like people to know that what they see in me is my Father's eyes. We have a paternity because we all come from the same place. We may have different fathers and mothers on this plane, but we all come from the same place because we all come from God. I am God means that I am your brother, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I am God steps us all into the arena of being one family, one understanding. So when we're celebrating Father's Day, we don't have to just celebrate our fathers, but we can celebrate one another coming from that one founding idea, the infinite creative idea, that spark of creation that made you, that made me, that made us who we are. We are one thing happening at all times. When I got cancer, I had to tell the children, of course, we had to tell the children that I had stage 4 cancer. I don't think we said stage 4 at the time, but we said I had cancer. And when we sat them down to tell them, we did it in a restaurant, just trying to give them some, giving us the cushion of being somewhere in public. And Nora, my daughter, when I said it, she got up, walked over to me, sat in my lap, and started crying. My son looked right at me and he said, "You gonna die?" That's it. "You gonna die?" And I've got Nora here crying, and I went, "No, I'm not gonna die." He went, "Okay then." However, that night, when I put them to bed, I kissed Nora, and I assured her I wasn't gonna die, and that everything was gonna be fine. And she was fine with that. She was comforted with that. She knew I was telling the truth. I went into Will to say goodnight to him, and I could see he was a little disturbed because he was doing his best to be the man, as we men do. Well, some of you do, I don't. But I know a lot of you really try to be really strong and manly about all of this. Right, Bob? Yes. So, my son said, "So you really aren't going to die, right?" I said, "No." He said, "I didn't think so because you are the most powerful person I know." And he said, "So we're all good." He said, "Because you are clear how powerful you are." He said, "So we're good, right?" I said, "Yep, we're good." And we were. We were. And I was good. And they were good. And we were all good, and I am really good today. But what I know is that there's something in our eyes. There's something right there in the center of who you are that is always tapped into that power. That's the Father power. That's the founding power of the universe. That is the initiating power of the universe. And it's right there, Nada. It is right there in your eyes. And all you have to be willing to do is tap into it, to remember who you are. Because really, in the end, we all have our Father's eyes. And it has nothing to do with the color. And it has everything to do with the power. So as we celebrate this Father's Day, let's really take the time to look into one another's eyes and see the Father. See the Father within that knows not only who it is, but who knows who you are. You are the power of the universe, just waiting, ready to burst forth. I say we burst forth today. What do you say? Yeah. Happy Father's Day.